Russell Westbrook is the most heavily criticized NBA player that I have ever seen. It's not even really close. LeBron James is polarizing. That's true. But when it pertains to the sports media, okay, when it pertains to, as Kevin Durant infamously referred to, LeBron James has his fanboys when it comes to the media. You know, a Michael Rappaport is an anomaly. Most of those guys tend to kiss LeBron James' ass, and it's the fans who actually observe the game and are free and independent thinkers. They tend to balance it out by saying, you know, well, LeBron James isn't a god. LeBron James does make mistakes out there. LeBron James can be a selfish player at times. Um, we all know that Russell Westbrook is struggling shooting the basketball. He's only shooting 41.5% from the floor. Okay, he's never been exactly a sharpshooter. He usually shoots around 44 to 45% from the floor. That's a standard Westbrook season. He's never been a great outside shooter, but normally he shoots somewhere between 30 to 33% from beyond the arc. This year he's only shooting 24% or so from beyond the arc. That's atrocious. He's not even knocking down his free throws. I think he's only shooting 64, 65% from the foul line. And I can't make any excuses for him, but I can perhaps attempt to make some explanations. One thing that bothers me about the media is now it seems like there's more of a tendency to have storylines and buzzwords and catchphrases attached to players. You know what I mean? Like with Russell Westbrook, it tends to be uh, out of control, uh, erratic, um, selfish, which I no longer really understand anymore. Um, stat patter. Um, you get the idea, right? Now, when it pertains to his shooting, like I said, uh, he's never he's never going to be considered a great shooter. But one thing that I can't say is that people forget the fact that this guy did have major surgery before this season. I can recall prior to the 97-98 season, Michael Jordan supposedly sliced his finger with a cigar cutter or something like that. Um, that was the story. And it affected his shooting, okay? And the media made note of that. They consistently made note of the fact that he had that injury to his finger, which caused problems with his shooting. I remember when Kobe Bryant had the hairline fracture in one of his fingers when he wore the tape, had the fingers taped up and stuff. And he had some erratic shooting performances. And they were quick to bring that up. They blamed injuries and age for, and they should have, for Kobe Bryant's horrible shooting the last couple of years in the league. I think the last 2 years he shot, I think 2015 season he shot 37% from the floor. And then his last year he shot 35% from the floor. Absolutely horrible shooting numbers. But they don't mention the fact that Russell Westbrook was recovering from a major surgery. All right. In fact, he missed what was the first 4 games of the season. So nobody brings into account that this might have caused some still lingering issues with his body as far as shooting, in particular, shooting from outside. I do know that any issues with your knees or legs or lingering issues can affect your outside shot. As far as his free throws are concerned, the last couple of years, he has struggled, especially this year, he struggled from shooting from the foul line. Last year, he shot 72% from the foul line. This year, like I said, he's only shooting like 64, 65% from the free throw line. And a friend of mine had brought this up to me, and I had totally forgotten about this. They recently changed the rules as far as free throw routines. Russell used to have a relatively lengthy free throw routine, which worked for him because for the first couple of years of his career, the first several seasons of his career, Russell Westbrook has been an 80+% foul shooter. They've changed the rules where they're trying to speed the game up, and he can no longer go through that routine that he was accustomed to. So I think when he's shooting free throws now, he's out of his rhythm and he's thinking. I think he missed a couple of them. He's missed several. And then you start thinking out there instead of just going through your automatic motions, your muscle memory, your automatic motions. I think he's thinking. And I think that's caused him to miss a lot of free throws. Now, that's just the explanation, but he still has to work it through. He has to learn how to still be an effective free throw shooter. Because, like I always believe, a point guard, as much as a point guard has the ball in his hands, it's a negative on a team to have a guy who's a point guard and can't shoot at least 80% from the foul line. Now, last night, Russell Westbrook kind of had a bad game in some ways. He turned the ball over 10 times. But it should be noted that a lot of his turnovers aren't necessarily his fault. You could question the passes, but I kind of blame more of the fact that some of his teammates just probably don't have great hands. Oftentimes, some of them are passes that he's trying to punch in to guys cutting to the basket, and they kind of fumble the ball out of bounds. There was a lot of turnovers like that last night. It was a lot of turnovers where the receiving player, as far as passes concerned, couldn't quite handle his passes, and some of them were intercepted by a Rockets player. Like I said, I'm not trying to make excuses, but people get the impression that Russell just is a careless basketball player, and I don't see that in the games that I've watched him. There are some times where I think he takes bad shots, but as far as caring for the basketball, I think he's a lot better than he once was. That's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's interesting how James Harden, who turns the ball over even more so than Russell Westbrook, somehow escapes criticism for him turning the ball over. I don't understand that one. But Russell is Russell. He struggles from the field, and he's just not shooting the basketball well. I don't think he's going to shoot the ball well this season, man. He was 8 for 21 from the field last night, 1 of 5 from 3-point range. He was 4 of 5 from the free throw line, so that's good. And technically, he had a quadruple double, but not in a good way. But he had his ninth consecutive triple double. His ninth consecutive triple double, and that ties the modern day record now shared with Wilt Chamberlain, who accomplished the feat during the 1967-68 NBA season. Although I've said before, and I'll say it again, that unofficially, Will Chamberlain is probably the all-time triple-double leader, and it's not even close. Not even close. He probably has at least 300 career triple-doubles, maybe as many as 400. But of course, it didn't count blocks when he played. But this was Russell's ninth consecutive triple-double, the 22nd of this season after starting the season off slowly, and the 126th of his career, the 126th. And he's done this in fewer than 800 games. He gets triple doubles more frequently than any NBA player in history, with the exception, officially, of Oscar Robertson. Um, at this point, the way that he's getting triple doubles, he might actually pass Magic this year. Definitely by early next year, but he might actually pass him up this year. And one other thing I want to say about Russell too. This year, let me see what the numbers are. 21.2 points per game, 11.1 rebounds per game, which is a career high, and 11.2 assists per game, which leads the NBA. And if he goes on to lead the NBA in assists, which most likely he will, this will be the second year he's led the NBA in assists, but yet he's supposedly a selfish player. When I watch Russell, I don't see a guy who, for the most part, is going out there trying to get triple doubles. Does he sag off his man at times to grab defensive rebounds? I think so. Yeah, but I think he's gambling a little bit with that one. I don't see a guy who is consciously trying to chase them. I'm going to admit something. During that 42 triple-double season, that year when he led the NBA in scoring, there were some games I saw him stat pad a little bit. Okay? I wasn't going to say it in the video because I didn't want to feed the haters. But really, to be honest with you, watching him this year, I don't really see a guy who is chasing triple doubles. I see a guy who has developed a play style where he lets the game come to him, and it's effortless now for him to get triple doubles. You see, the difference between him and LeBron James, I've seen LeBron James in the fourth quarters, late in fourth quarters, look at the scoreboard, see he has maybe 35 points, 7 rebounds, and 11 assists. And I can see him sagging, purposely trying to chase those last 3 rebounds, potentially hurting his team to get the triple double that he lusts after. Russell, it's just the way he plays. It's almost the system that they have. You know, he's surrounded by guys who are spot up shooters. Oftentimes, the way that they run their team, they prefer him to grab the defensive board. You know what I'm saying, and push. You know, in potential fast break situations, or push for the, and run their offense. That's kind of the way they play, and that's why oftentimes in the third quarter he's flirting with a triple double, if not already attained it. But from watching him, I don't really see a guy chasing triple doubles. I'm being honest. I don't see it like other people do. Now, I know some people aren't as enamored or as in all the triple double. And yeah, I have said it before that it's much easier in today's NBA than it was 20 years ago to get a triple double. And when you got one 20, 25 years ago, it meant something different. You didn't have guys consciously trying to chase numbers and records and stats. But of course, we have players that are more selfish nowadays and more self-aware than back then. But Westbrook, not the best point guard in the league, by far not the best player in the league. I've even seen an article where some people say he's not even a top 5 point guard anymore. But he's probably my favorite player. I like the way he approaches the game. I think the reason why he and Paul George mesh so well is they kind of have an old school mentality when it comes to how to play the game. And even though I don't see this team getting out of the second round, if they got to the Western Conference Finals, that's a major accomplishment if they do that this year. But they're a team that I like to root for, and I love to root for the underdog. That's just how I always been, and I love Russell, you know. But tell me what you guys think.